We're taking a look at the Enclave today because the 2013 model year was a refresh for the Enclave, and that's because the Enclave was the first of the Lambda series of SUVs to pop out of General Motors way back in 2008. Let's walk around, let's dive under the hood, dive inside, and see how it compares with its most recent competitors, most namely that Acura Mdx. I find this one of the more attractive entries in this segment. I do like the way that JX35/QX60 looks, but it does kind of have a sort of a fish eating someone look on the front end. The Lincoln MKT is, I'm not sure what's going on there actually with the Lincoln MKT. I'll post a picture here so you can see that one, but not finding that Lincoln nose terribly attractive. I do like the Acura Mdx look up front, however, even though it has that Acura beak. Buick has also included new headlamps in the Buick Enclave, and they feature an LED strip right here and LEDs right across the bottom. We do have projector HID headlamps in our particular Enclave. Buick is still dedicated to the Ventaport, and while I haven't warmed up to the new Ventaports going on modern Buicks, at least the ones on this Enclave are an awful lot more demure than the ones on the current Buick Encore. I really like the Buick Encore. It's my favorite small SUV currently on the market, but its Ventaports are enormous. I think that the Enclave is currently the most attractive of the General Motors Lambda series SUVs, and a lot of it has to do with this character line. It really steps out an awful lot at the base of the vehicle right here in the rear, giving the Enclave sort of a hip look to it, with this bottom part bulging out more than the top. It continues along the sides and then across to the front where the hood steps in again at the top. The look is very 1999 Volvo S80, but it is very attractive on the Buick Enclave. It also helps keep the Enclave from looking too slab-sided. Let's take a closer look at those tires and rims. When you get down here right next to them, you see that these are pretty large wheels and pretty large tires. These are 255 60R19 tires on 19-inch rims. They really fill out these wheel wells on the Enclave very nicely. The important thing to keep in mind about these is they are fairly wide, and that is important because the Enclave is a very heavy vehicle. It's just about a cupcake shy of 5,000 pounds. And that's important to have wide tires when you're hauling that much weight around. Helps the vehicle handle better. But the high profile rubber is also important because unlike many SUVs that have choppy rides or easily bend rims when you hit a pothole or a parking lot headstone or a curb or something like that, that won't happen in the Enclave because of this higher profile rubber. There is a little bit of a handling toll to be paid and a little bit of a feel toll to be paid as well with these high profile tires, but personally I'd take that in my crossover. Out back, Buick went for simple and elegant with these chrome rings around new tail lamp modules. Most importantly, these are not LED tail lamp modules like you find on some of the competition, but they are quite attractive. We have a fairly vertical tailgate, which helps with cargo loading on the inside. We have more chrome down here across the bottom of the bumper, well-integrated parking sensors. This little hatch right here covers up the trailer hitch receiver if we had it in our particular Enclave, but we don't. Right over here we have integrated dual exhaust tips. Now these are just part of the bumper cover, and the real exhaust tip is actually in there attached to the muffler. There's only one engine in the Enclave. It's this direct injection 3.6 liter V6. It produces 288 horsepower and 270 pound-feet of torque. It's mated to a General Motors 6-speed automatic transaxle, and that sends power to the front wheels or to all four wheels depending on which option box you check. This is notably lower output than other applications of General Motors' 3.6 liter V6 engine, and so my real hope is that at some point or another there will be an engine upgrade to the Enclave. We don't see it coming anytime soon though. Front seat comfort in the Enclave is very good. It missed excellent by just a few points, however. It is a little bit less comfortable than the Acura Mdx, which is brand new in this segment, and a lot of that has to do with this headrest, which we'll go over later as we tour the interior. But the headrest doesn't move up or rearwards very much, meaning that it hits me in kind of a strange place on my back. If you're a taller person than I am, I'm only about 6 feet tall, then that headrest will probably hit you in an even stranger place in your back, so that is something to keep in mind. We have a multi-way power driver's seat, which is quite adjustable, but we only have a 2-way lumbar support in the Enclave, which is a little bit unusual because General Motors is known for having 4-way adjustable lumbar support in a wide variety of even less expensive vehicles than this. We have a tilt telescoping power memory steering wheel, which has a decent range of motion. As with most vehicles, the seats get less comfortable as we move towards the back. We're in a 7-passenger Enclave, which means we get these captain's chairs that move forwards and backwards and have a small degree of recline to them. This is the most upright position, and that is the most reclined position that you can get in these middle seats. There is plenty of headroom, however, if you're tall. In the back, I have about 3 inches of headroom left in this middle row, even though our particular Enclave has this $1,400 optional 2-row sunroof. There's several options for getting in the back. You can, of course, crawl between these two captain's chairs. You can also pull this little lever right here and you can fold them down. That's also for carrying extra cargo, but you can also hop over this carpeted section of the seat into the back if you feel particularly limber, or you can pull this other lever right here on the seat back, and this causes this seat mechanism to fold and compress like that. That takes an awful lot of effort. It is worth noting that the Acura Mdx now has a power version of a very similar mechanism to move that seat forward. Another thing to keep in mind if you're doing comparisons between this and some of the other entries in the segment is that the Infiniti JX35/QX60 has a feature where you can basically move this seat forward while there is still a child seat in the seat. Obviously, by the way this seat is contorting, you can't keep a child seat in the seat while you move it forward. I'm now in the third row of the Enclave, and the first thing you'll notice about this area back here is that it's larger than something like an Acura Mdx or the Lincoln MKT. This seat is still quite close to the floor, as you can see if I actually put my legs where they'd need to be if that middle row seat was in place. In fact, I'll move that right back in place so you can see how I relate to it now. But I do have about 2 inches of legroom left between my knees and this middle seat. And this middle seat is in its upright position. Now it's in its most reclined position. I still have maybe about ½ an inch there of legroom left, even if that middle seat is in its most reclined spot. I do have one cup holder back here, and I have a decent amount of headroom as well. Even though our particular model has the optional $1,400 sunroof, I do have about 2 inches of headroom back here. That means that you can put 6-foot tall adults in the back of the Enclave. I wouldn't put 3 of them necessarily. This middle seat is not terribly large, but you can sit in here for a decent amount of time. Headroom is still about the same as it is in the outboard seats right here in the middle, but it's just not quite as comfortable. You do get a little bit more legroom if you were to move this second row seat back, however. Let's take a quick look around the Enclave's interior. Let's start out with these headrests. Front seats have a 4-way adjustable headrest. Push the little button, they move in and out and forward and backward. But as you can see, in their most upright and most rearward position, they still project quite far forward. It's probably good for whiplash protection, but they do hit me in a strange place on the back because my head and my neck don't start till right about here. So this portion is still hitting me right there in the back, just below the neck. If we move down, we'll find perforated leather. We do have the cooled seats in our particular Enclave here that we're testing. If we move over to the doors, we'll find the new interior on the Enclave now sports this faux stitching on the door and down there on the armrest. Plenty of soft touch plastics. There's also plenty of fake wood going on. We'll take a closer look at that fake wood. It is honestly very, very, very fake looking. Can't really think of any other way to describe that. If we scoot on over to the dashboard, we'll see this new dashboard design in the 2013 and 2014 Enclaves. It is a very, very attractive design. It's not stitched leather, and it's not stitched pleather either. This is actually just an injection molded dashboard. So if we look very closely here, you'll see what's going on. And this is all injection molded as one piece. So you can see that there's no real seam going on there between this textured section and this leather look right here, but there is real stitching. So they've injection molded everything, including the seam, and then they've run back over it with a sewing machine. The effect is very good on the dashboard. This is probably the best looking injection molded dashboard I've ever seen, and definitely better looking than a lot of the faux leather dashboards that are out there as well. It's not quite as nice as a full leather dashboard, but there really isn't anybody in this segment that offers one. Scooting down, we'll see our heated and cooled seats, rear windshield wiper, traction control, and that power rear tailgate hatch. Moving down to the center console here, we have our shifter, 2 large cup holders, easily accommodated large drinks, a roller cover over the cubby in the center console here. This does have a fairly deep compartment there. We have the headphones for the rear seat entertainment system stored in there. We also have this armrest that slides forward and backward and opens to reveal an additional storage compartment right there. It's fairly shallow. This is the location of the only USB port that works with that infotainment system. It's right there in that little storage cubby. I have my iPhone 5 plugged into there. My only complaint about the storage cubby is that it's a little bit high on the dashboard. So if you have the dark dashboard in your car and you have an iPhone or an iPod in there, it's going to get a little hot in the sun. My second complaint is, right as you see it here, if you have your phone plugged in there, because you're using your phones for your tunes, then you have this cord sort of dangling down the center console. It's not exactly attractive. Moving over to the instrument cluster, we have a 5-dial arrangement with a fairly old school electrofluorescent trip computer. If we move out to the steering wheel, we'll find the only real wood trim going on in the Enclave, and that is this steering wheel right here. You can see that is a nice long grain dark wood, and it's kind of reddish. It contrasts very sharply with that gray fake wood going on the doors, and it really makes the doors look an awful lot more fake than they would otherwise. If we continue to zoom out, you'll see that the steering wheel is the old Buick design. It's not the new Buick design that you'll find in the Verano and a number of other Buicks. That means that we have a fairly nice but thin leather-wrapped side, wood bottom, wood top, fairly hard plastic airbag cover, and the old Buick arrangement of radio control and voice command buttons over here, and then the cruise control buttons over here on the left. Over here we have the largest roller bag you can carry on a domestic flight. As you can see, you can fit quite a number of them in the back here without folding down that third row seat. That is important, but it is made possible because the Enclave is a fairly large 3-row crossover. Underneath this floor hatch we have additional storage as well as a spare tire. It's fairly easy to hop in the Enclave, and that power hatch makes it a lot easier to close the hatch on yourself. We do have a handle over there if you want to close the hatch yourself. Let's take a closer look at Buick's Intellilink system. Again, I do have an iPhone connected, which means that I will be referring to the iOS and Apple device interfaces when it comes to the media section. I will try and point out differences if I'm aware of them where that will apply. Over here we have the eject button for the single slot CD player, auxiliary input over there. We have touch buttons on the screen. They're not physical mechanical buttons, so if you do have dry hands then it may be more difficult for you to use them. Home button, source, seek forward, backward. A back button, this is for use in the menus, along with this rotary selector dial, push to enter. Destination, navigation, repeat for navigation commands. Over here we have our trip computer buttons, and that controls the trip computer in the instrument cluster back over there by the steering wheel. Over here we have our lane departure warning and our collision prevention system right there. Over on the home page, everything is driven by these icons. So we have Now Playing will take us to whatever media device is currently playing audio. Navigation takes you to your map, destination, phone interface, weather delivered by XM, traffic delivered by XM, system settings, and then tone to change bass, treble, etc. On this next screen we'll find our picture viewer, Stitcher Smart Radio that requires a smartphone with the Stitcher Radio app on it, text messaging if your device supports it. Currently only Android devices support this feature. Ipod Interface, XM satellite radio, Bluetooth audio, Pandora. Again, this will work off of your smartphone device. It works with any smartphone at this time. Single disc player right over there. Moving on to the next screen, AM and FM, front auxiliary input right here, and then the rear auxiliary input, which is in that center console that we just saw earlier, does allow you to see video on this particular screen. You can go back using the back button or the back button right here. You can hit home up here or home right there. The favorite screen allows you to see radio presets on the bottom. You can set those to any particular radio source that you like. Voice command button here as well as on the steering wheel. Going back to the home screen, we'll hit Now Playing so we can see our audio screen there. Fairly self-explanatory for the AM and FM. You can also hit the source button on the bottom and it'll take us to a very abbreviated menu where we can click over to XM satellite radio or the Ipod Interface. The Ipod Interface is one of the best in the industry. The menu is very snappy, very responsive, very easy to use. Preloads all this information from your iDevice when you first connect it, so navigating around it is very speedy, as you can see right there. Access to the back button, or you can use the back button right there to take you back in those playlists. We also have full voice commands, and the voice commands in this system sound the most natural of any system that's currently out on the market. That includes my Ford Touch, BMW's iDrive, etc. The voice responses in the system are quite good. Click over here to the source button. We have another way of getting into that same screen, and we can go back to Pandora Radio or those other auxiliary inputs. If we hit the destination button, this takes you to your address entry screen. System is fairly responsive when it comes to this. We'll enter one here so you can see it's definitely faster than I am as far as interactions are concerned. The system is this rapid because all of this data is stored in flash memory, so that makes accessing it very rapid. If we hit done, we can hit start guidance, and the system calculates the routes and recalculates
traffic laws.
Oh, there we go. We have traffic information right there on the screen as well. We can tell it to avoid it. We can avoid the entire route. But as I was saying, the system deals with renavigating you if you make a wrong turn very rapidly, unlike older systems that were CD or hard drive based. Hit the repeat button there if you want to repeat your voice command, and then the voice command volume is done by this little knob over here, same as all the other voice options in the system. Cell phone interface is very good in this system. If we go back to the home page, we can click that phone button if we had a Bluetooth phone paired. My phone is not paired at this particular time, but the voice quality in the system is very good. In terms of the competition, I rank this above my Ford Touch in many ways. It doesn't look quite as good as my Ford Touch, but it is far more reliable. The voice commands are more natural, and it is just a little bit easier to use in my opinion. It doesn't look quite as nice. It also doesn't look quite as nice as the new Acura Mdx's 2-screen setup. I find that the Acura setup is just a little bit half-baked, whereas this system comes across fully baked and fully developed. The Acura system looks prettier, but I don't think it's quite as easy to use as this system. The Infinity system is getting a little bit old. It is fairly easy to use, but it's not as fully featured as this system. Overall, I rank this probably the tops in this particular segment, although again, the Acura system is fairly attractive as well, as is the My Ford Touch and My Lincoln Touch system. The high curb weight of the Enclave, nearly 5,000 pounds, makes a huge impact on the way that this car handles out on the road. 0 to 60 acceleration happened in 7.3 seconds. That's quite a bit slower than the JX35 QX60 as well as the Acura Mdx. And the JX35 has a decent amount less torque from its 3.5-liter V6. However, that CVT really helps its acceleration out on the road. In terms of braking, 60 to 0 in 144 feet is kind of long for this vehicle, and that's despite the fact that the tires are pretty wide. Again, it's really just that 5,000-pound curb weight that causes all that to happen. The curb weight, the fairly soft springs, and the high-profile tires mean that the Enclave isn't really a corner carver. If you want corner carving in your 3-row crossover, then the Acura Mdx is the vehicle for you. With its torque vectoring rear axle and the super handling all-wheel drive system, it definitely handles considerably better than this Buick Enclave. Although the Enclave doesn't really feel like a wet noodle, it handles better than you might think out on the road. And that's despite the soft springs and those high-profile tires. That really is just because of how much time GM has spent tuning the suspension and the front-wheel drive system in this Enclave. In terms of handling, the Enclave is ahead of that JX35, which just feels a little bit less confident out on the road, but it's definitely behind the Lincoln MKT. The Lincoln MKT has a decent amount more power because you have that twin-turbo V6 option, and the profile of the tires is notably lower, which helps the handling out a decent amount in that MKT. I just have troubles getting past the MKT's looks. Buicks have long been associated with soft, quiet rides, and that's definitely happening here with the Enclave. We tested at 68 decibels in our sound tests at 50 miles an hour on the same asphalt road that we test every other car on. That is just a little bit louder than some of the more modern Buicks like the LaCrosse, the Verado, and the Encore, but it is still very good for this segment. The 6-speed automatic transmission in the Enclave is closely related to the one in the Lincoln MKT because Ford and General Motors co-developed those transmissions together, so they feel very similar. Shifts are fairly smooth, fairly responsive, but occasionally the transmission does seem to get the wrong gear for you. Supposedly the programming has been corrected for 2013 to try and fix some of those problems that reviewers complained about from the 2008 model, but it seems like General Motors still has just a little bit of work to do. Overall, out on the road, the Enclave is a perfectly capable 3-row crossover vehicle. Definitely feels better out on the road than some of the other 8-passenger vehicles that are out there. And when you consider that the Enclave does have that 8-seat option, it broadens the window of comparisons for the Enclave out to things like the Honda Pilot, as well as General Motors full-size SUVs. And in that comparison, the Enclave does extraordinarily well. This is definitely a better vehicle to drive out on the road than either the Honda Pilot or any of GM's full-size SUVs. It just feels more responsive, more nimble, more eager out on the road. That steering feel is really noticeable out on these winding mountain roads that we're on right now because it feels like there's a slight delay in the steering. Again, that's just thanks to those high-profile tires, but if you turn the steering wheel, then it seems like the car takes just a little bit of time to get steering in the direction that you've indicated, causing you to possibly oversteer or overcorrect just a little bit more than you'd like. Still, the limits in the car are very high, much higher than you'd think a 5,000-pound SUV would be. With pricing ranging from just under $39,000 to just over $53,000, the Enclave is competing with the likes of the Acura Mdx, the Volvo XC90, the Lincoln MKT, as well as that Infiniti JX35 in the 3-row luxury crossover market. That's a decently competitive segment, so let's go over them one by one. I'm not including the Audi Q7 because I just have troubles believing that an Audi Q7 shopper is going to cross-shop a Buick, or even an Acura or a Lincoln for that matter, so that one's off my list. Number one in this particular segment then is that new Acura Mdx. It has excellent driving dynamics, it's a touch pricey, but it also has a really gorgeous interior. The Infiniti JX35/QX60 is my number two. It has excellent fuel economy, it performs a little bit better than this vehicle, but it's not quite as dynamic. Then this Buick comes in third, of course. Then we have the Volvo XC90, which is getting a little bit long in the tooth, but still has excellent driving dynamics and a very nice interior. We have then the Lincoln MKT, which in my mind loses an awful lot of points because it has a dreadful looking nose and the side profile looks an awful lot like a hearse. It has that funky little kink up right back here, and every time that I'm in a Lincoln MKT, I feel like I should be driving my grandmother to the crematorium. Although I've ranked the Enclave third in this segment, there are some very compelling reasons to choose this over the number 1 and the number 2. The first is the size. The Enclave is the largest in this particular segment, and that does account for something if you have a lot of cargo to carry. The second reason is that it has an 8-seat passenger option, and that's very unique in this segment. So if you need to carry 8 people, then just stop at the Enclave because none of the other entries will do that. Again, I'm Alex Dykes, and thanks for joining us as we took a look at the 2014 Buick Enclave. Go ahead and click on over to our reviews of the Infiniti JX35, as well as our look at the Acura Mdx. Be sure and click that subscribe banner at the bottom of your screen, as well as comment on this video and tell us what you liked and what you didn't like, and what we could improve on next time.